Sectors of economic activities. Let us look at these pictures. You will find that people are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these are activities producing goods, some others are producing services. These activities are happening around us every minute as we speak. How do we understand these activities? One way of doing this is to group them or classify them using some important criteria. These groups are also called sectors. Take, for example, the cultivation of cotton. It takes place within a crop season. For the growth of the cotton plant, we depend mainly but not entirely on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine, and climate. The product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Similarly, in the case of an activity like dairy, we are dependent on biological processes of animals and availability of fodder, etc. The product here, milk, also is a natural product. Similarly, minerals and ores are also natural products. When we produce a good by exploiting natural resources, it is an activity of the primary sector. Why primary? Well, this is because it forms the base of all other products that we subsequently make. Since most of the natural products we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, this system is also called agriculture and related sector. Changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with industrial activity. It is the next step after primary. The product is not produced by nature but has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is essential. This could be in a factory, a workshop, or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from the plant, we spin yarn and weave cloth. Using sugarcane as a raw material, we make sugar or gur. We convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since this sector gradually became associated with the different kinds of industries that came up, it is also called an industrial sector. That falls under tertiary sector and is different from the above two. These are activities that help in the development of the primary and secondary sectors. These activities by themselves do not produce a good, but they are a need or a support for the production process. For example, goods that are produced in the primary or secondary sector would need to be transported by trucks or trains and then sold in wholesale and retail shops. At times, it may be necessary to store these in godowns. We also may need to talk to others over telephone or send letters. So it is communication. or borrow money from banks, that is banking, to help production and trade. Transport, storage, communication, banking, trade are some examples of tertiary activities. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. Production of goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, and those who provide personal services such as washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers, and people to do administrative and accounting works. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc. have become important. Sectors produce a very large number of goods and services. Also, the three sectors have a large number of people working in them to produce these goods and services. The next step, therefore, is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people work in each sector. In an economy, there could be one or more sectors which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, while other sectors are relatively small in size. Production in each sector. With so many thousands of goods and services produced, you might think it is an important task. Not only would the task be enormous, you might also wonder how can we add up cars and computers and nails and furniture? It won't make sense. You are right in thinking so. To get around this problem, the economists suggest the values of goods and services should be used rather than adding up the actual numbers. For example, if 10,000 kg of wheat is sold at rupees 8 per kg, the value of wheat will be rupees 80,000. The value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 10 per coconut will be rupees 50,000. Similarly, the value of goods and services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. Not every good or service that is produced and sold needs to be counted. It makes sense only to include the final goods and services. Take, for instance, a farmer who sells wheat to a flour mill for rupees 8 per kg. The mill grinds the wheat and sends the flour to a biscuit company for rupees 10 per kg. The biscuit company uses the flour and things such as sugar and oil to make 4 packets of biscuits. It sells biscuits in the market to the consumers for rupees 60, that is, rupees 15 per packet. Biscuits are the final goods, that is, goods that reach the consumers. Why are only final goods and services counted? In contrast to final goods, goods such as wheat and the wheat flour in this example are intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of final goods already includes the value of all intermediate goods that are used in making the final good. Hence, the power of rupees 60 for the biscuits, that is final good, already includes the value of flour, which is rupees 10. Similarly, value of all other intermediate goods who have been included. To count the value of flour and wheat separately is therefore not correct, because then we would be counting the value of same things a number of times. First as wheat, then as flour, and finally as biscuits. Sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year. And the sum of production in the three sectors gives what is called the gross domestic product, which is the GDP of a country. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. GDP shows how big the economy is. In India, the mammoth task of measuring GDP is undertaken by this central government ministry. This ministry, with the help of various government departments of all the Indian states and union territories, collects information relating to total volumes of goods and services and their prices, and then estimates the GDP. Is that at initial stages of development, primary sector was the most important sector of economic activity. As the methods of farming changed and agriculture sector began to prosper, it produced much more food than before. Many people could now take up other activities. There were increasing numbers of craft persons and traders. Buying and selling activities increased many times. Besides, there are also transporters, administrators, army, etc. However, at this stage, most of the goods produced were natural products from primary sector, and most people were employed in this sector. Factories came up and started expanding. Those people who had earlier worked on farms now began to work in factories in large numbers. People began to use many more goods that were produced in factories at cheap rates. Secondary sector gradually became the most important in total production and employment. Hence, over time, a shift had taken place. This means that the importance of these sectors had changed. The service sector has become the most important in terms of total production. Most of the working people are also employed in the service sector. This is the general pattern observed in developed countries. What is the total production and employment in the three sectors in India? Over the years, have there been changes similar to the pattern observed for the developed countries? Well, we shall see in the next section. Goods and services in the three sectors. This is shown for 2 years, 1970-71 and 2010-11. You can see how the total production has grown over the 40 years. Let's work these out. Answer the following questions by looking at the graph. Number 1. Which was the largest producing sector in 1970-71? Answer. Primary sector was the largest producing sector in 1970-71. Number 2. Which is the largest producing sector in 2010-11? Answer. Tertiary sector was the largest producing sector in 2010-11. Number 3. Can you say which sector has grown the most over 40 years? Answer. Tertiary sector has grown the most over 40 years. Number 4. What was the GDP of India in 2011? Answer. Rupees 50 lakh crore was the GDP of India in 2011. And in 2010-11. While production in all the three sectors has increased, it has increased the most in the tertiary sector. As a result, in the year 1970-71 and 2010-11, the tertiary sector has emerged as the largest producing sector in India, replacing the primary sector. Why is the tertiary sector becoming so important in India? There could be several reasons. Such as hospitals, educational institutions, post and telegraph services, police stations, courts, village administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transport, banks, insurance companies, etc. are required. These can be considered as basic services. In a developing country, the government has to take responsibility for the provision of these services. Second, the development of agriculture and industry leads to the development of services such as transport, trade, storage, and the like, as we have already seen. Greater the development of primary and secondary, more would be the demand for such services. Many more services like eating out, tourism, shopping, private hospitals, private schools, professional training, etc. You can see this change quite sharply in cities, especially in big cities. Fourth, over the past year or so, certain new services such as those based on information and communication technology have become important and essential. The production of these services has been rising rapidly. In Chapter 4, we shall see examples of these services and the reason for their expansion. The service sector is growing equally well. Service sector in India employs many different kinds of people. At one end, there are a limited number of services that employ highly skilled and educated workers. At the other end, there are a very large number of workers engaged in services such as small shopkeepers, repair persons, transport persons, etc. These people barely manage to earn a living, and yet they perform these services because no alternative opportunities for work are available for them. Hence, only a part of this sector is growing in importance. You shall read more about this in the next section, in the GDP. Now you can directly see the changing importance of the sectors over the past 40 years. A remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the three sectors in GDP, a similar shift has not taken place in employment. Graph 3 shows the share of employment in the three sectors in 1970-71 and 2009-10. The primary sector continues to be the largest employer even now. Why didn't a similar shift out of primary sector happen in case of employment? It is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sectors. Even though industrial output or the production of goods went up by 9 times during the period, employment in the industry went up by only 3 times. The same applies to tertiary sector as well. While production in the service sector rose by 14 times, employment in the service sector rose less than 5 times, producing only a quarter of the GDP. In contrast to this, the secondary and tertiary sectors produce 3/4 of the produce, whereas they employ less than half the people. Does this mean that workers in the agriculture are not producing as much as they could? Well, what it means is that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So, even if you move a few people out, production will not be affected. In other words, workers in agriculture sector are underemployed. Rain and growing crops like jawar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. Why? Well, they have nowhere else to go for work. You will see that everyone is working, none remains idle, but in actual fact, their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment, where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is also called disguised unemployment. Now, supposing a landlord, Sukhram, comes and hires 1 or 2 members of the family to work on his land, Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages. Since you do not need 5 people to look after that small plot, 2 people moving out production on their farm. In the above example, two people may move to work in factory. Once again, the earnings of the family would increase and they would also continue to produce as much from their land in large urban centers. Government. If the government fails in its duty to provide employment, it will give unemployment allowance to the people. The types of work that would in future help to increase the production from land will be given preference under the Act. He goes to the shop at 7:30 in the morning and works till 8 p.m. in the evening. He gets no other allowance apart from his wages. He is not paid for the days he does not work. He has therefore no leave or paid holidays. Nor was he given any formal letter saying that he has been employed in the shop. He can be asked to leave any time by his employer. What are these activities? Why do governments spend on such activities? Let's find out. It is also the duty of the government to take care of the poorest and most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas.